Imagine someone walks up to you today, a scientist in a white lab coat, and tells you to keep pressing a button that electrocutes a stranger in the next room. And you do it. Not because you're evil, not because you're broken, because someone told you to. Here's the thing they never taught you in school, and I mean never. The single most dangerous thing about human beings isn't cruelty, it's compliance. The Milgram Experiment didn't just change psychology, it cracked something open about every single one of us. Something most people spend their entire lives refusing to look at. Because the moment you understand what Stanley Milgram discovered in that basement lab at Yale in 1961, you will never look at yourself, your boss, your government, or any authority figure the same way again. This isn't a history lesson. This is a mirror, and you might not like what you see. Let's go back. New Haven, Connecticut, 1961. Stanley Milgram places a small ad in the local paper. We are looking for participants for a study on memory and learning. You will be paid $4 for 1 hour of your time. $4. That's all it took. Ordinary men, show up. Factory workers, teachers, postal clerks, regular people, people like you. They're greeted by a researcher in a gray lab coat, calm, professional, authoritative. He introduces them to another participant, a friendly, middle-aged man named Mr. Wallace. Soft-spoken, likable. They draw lots to decide who plays the teacher and who plays the learner. Spoiler, the draw is rigged. The real participant always becomes the teacher. Mr. Wallace, who is actually an actor, always becomes the learner. Mr. Wallace is led into the next room and strapped into a chair. The teacher, that's you, watches through the window as electrodes are attached to his wrists. Then you're sat in front of a machine. The researcher explains. Every time Mr. Wallace answers a memory question wrong, you must administer an electric shock. And with every wrong answer, you increase the voltage. Simple enough, right? At first, it seems fine. Mr. Wallace misses a few answers. You deliver small shocks, 15 volts, 30, 75. Then, at 120 volts, you hear it. A grunt, a yelp through the wall. That hurts. I'd like to stop now. Your stomach drops. You turn to the researcher. Surely, we stop now, right? The researcher looks at you, completely calm, and says, "Please continue." You hesitate. Maybe this is okay. Maybe he's fine. The researcher seems unbothered. Maybe you're overreacting. You press the button. 150 volts. "Let me out of here. I refuse to continue." 300 volts. Pounding on the wall, screaming. Then, silence. Dead silence. And the researcher turns to you and says quietly,
"An absence of response should be treated as an incorrect answer. Please continue."
Here is the question Milgram was really asking. How far do you go? Before Milgram ran his study, he asked psychiatrists, psychologists, and Yale students to predict the results. The consensus? 1%. Maybe 2% of people would go all the way to 450 volts. The rest would stop. Obviously, because only sadists and psychopaths would keep going. They were wrong. 65%. 65% of ordinary Americans, teachers, fathers, accountants, administered what they believed was a lethal electric shock to a stranger. Not because they wanted to hurt him, because a man in a white coat told them to. Let that sink in. 2 out of 3 people in that room were willing to potentially kill someone because an authority figure said, "Please, continue." Now, before you tell yourself, "I would have stopped. I would have been different," stay with me, because Milgram tested that too. Milgram didn't just run one version of this experiment. He ran nearly 20 variations, and what he found is more disturbing than the original results because it reveals exactly which levers of your psychology can be pulled to make you do almost anything. Variable 1, proximity. When the learner was in the same room, When the teacher could see his face, compliance dropped significantly. Not to zero, but it dropped. When the learner's hand had to be physically placed on a shock plate by the teacher, compliance dropped further still. What does that tell you? The closer you are to the consequences of your actions, the harder it becomes to ignore them. Dehumanizing your victim, making them faceless, voiceless, abstract, is the oldest trick in the book. Variable 2. The authority figure's presence. When the researcher gave instructions by phone instead of in the room, compliance plummeted from 65% to just 20%. Authority needs proximity too. Variable 3. Peer pressure. When other participants, also actors, refused to continue, the real participant almost always stopped as well. When peers complied, the real participant was far more likely to go to the end. We are not the individuals we think we are. We are, to a terrifying degree, the average of the people around us. Here's where it gets personal. Milgram identified something he called the agentic state. Under normal circumstances, you operate in an autonomous state. You make your own choices. You feel the weight of them. Your conscience is engaged. But the moment you enter a system, a hierarchy, an institution, a workplace, a military, something shifts. You stop seeing yourself as the author of your actions. You become an agent, an instrument, a conduit. You're just following instructions, just doing your job, just complying with procedure. And here's the terrifying part. Your brain actually changes in this state. Studies using modern neuroimaging have found that when people follow orders, they feel less agency, less responsibility, and brain regions associated with processing the outcomes of your actions literally show reduced activity. You don't just believe you're not responsible. Your brain acts like you're not responsible. This is why "I was just following orders" isn't only an excuse. For a compromised, compliant brain, it's a neurological reality. And before you think this only applies to experiments and war crimes, look around you. When was the last time you stayed quiet in a meeting because someone senior was in the room? When did you last do something you knew was wrong because the system said it was required? Here's what most people miss when they talk about Milgram. They focus on the teachers, the ones pressing the buttons. But Milgram's real discovery was about systems. The researcher never threatened anyone, never raised his voice, never promised punishment for stopping. He just said 4 phrases, over and over. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on. That's it. 4 sentences. No guns, no consequences, no coercion, and 2 out of 3 people potentially administered a lethal dose of electricity to another human being. The researcher, that calm man in the gray coat, represents every structure of authority you have ever lived inside. Your school, your company, your religion, your government. They don't need to threaten you. They just need to present themselves as legitimate, as credentialed, as the person who knows better. And then they just need to wait. Now, here is the part of this story that almost never gets told. Some people stopped. 35% of participants refused to go to 450 volts. Some stopped much earlier, and Milgram studied them too. What made them different? It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't age. It wasn't education level. The people who stopped had 2 things in common. First, they named what was happening. They said it out loud. This is wrong. I'm not doing this. The act of giving language to the situation, of narrating the reality in front of them, broke the spell. Second, they had a prior experience of defying authority in a meaningful situation. Not rebellion for rebellion's sake, but a moment where they had weighed an instruction against their own values and chosen their values. In other words, conscience isn't passive. It's a muscle, and like every muscle, it only works if you've used it. The people who stopped had practiced stopping. The people who continued had practiced complying. Ask yourself honestly, which one have you been practicing? Now, you might be thinking, okay, this was the 1960s. We're more enlightened now, more critical, more aware. But the Milgram experiment has been replicated dozens of times, across decades, across cultures. In 2009, psychologist Jerry Berger recreated a partial version of it at Santa Clara University. Compliance rates were virtually identical to 1961. Nothing changed, and it doesn't stay in labs. In 2001, an Air France nurse named Fida Hadra administered a lethal overdose to a patient because a doctor on the phone told her to. She complied. The patient died. She later said, "I had doubts, but he was the doctor." In corporate fraud cases from Enron to Wells Fargo, thousands of employees, ordinary people with families and mortgages and good intentions, falsified documents, destroyed records, covered up crimes, because their managers told them the company required it. This is not ancient history. This is Tuesday morning. The question isn't whether you live inside systems that ask you to comply. You do. We all do. The question is, do you know it? Understanding the Milgram experiment doesn't make you immune. I want to be very clear about that. You cannot think your way out of the agentic state in real time. The social pressure, the authority cues, the fear of embarrassment, it all happens too fast for your analytical mind to catch. What you can do is build the infrastructure before you need it. This is what Milgram's defiers had. A pre-built framework. A set of values that were already so deeply felt, so previously tested, that when the moment came, the answer was already decided. It works like this. Identify your non-negotiables before you're under pressure. What are the 3 things you will never do, regardless of who asks? Write them down. Say them out loud. Make them real. Practice naming authority dynamics in low-stakes situations. When your boss asks you to shade a number, when a group consensus forms that you disagree with, name it internally, even if you don't act on it yet. I'm being asked to comply. I have a choice. Cultivate a defiance anchor. One person in your life whose opinion matters more to you than any institution. Ask yourself, what would they think if they saw me do this? These aren't tricks. They're the only documented differences between the people who stopped and the people who didn't. Here's something most people never read. After publishing his findings, after watching hundreds of ordinary people potentially commit what they believed to be murder in his laboratory, Stanley Milgram didn't conclude that human beings are evil. He concluded something more unsettling. He said that the capacity for evil and the capacity for virtue live in exactly the same place: our responsiveness to social context. The same trait that made 65% of people continue shocking a stranger is the same trait that makes soldiers run into gunfire to save their friends. The same trait that makes people donate organs to strangers. The same trait that made ordinary citizens hide Jewish families in Nazi-occupied Europe at the risk of their own lives because an authority they respected told them it was the right thing to do. You are not a fixed moral character. You are a moral character in permanent dialogue with your environment. And that means the most important thing you can do, the single highest leverage act available to you, is to choose your environment and your authority figures with radical intentionality, because they are choosing you, whether you know it or not. 65%. That number hasn't changed in 60 years, and it won't change until individuals, one by one, decide they are going to be part of the 35% who stop. Not because they are more intelligent, not because they are more virtuous, but because they did the work ahead of time of knowing exactly who they are and what they will not do. Milgram didn't run this experiment to shame us. He ran it because after the Holocaust, after 6 million people were systematically murdered by ordinary men and women following orders, he needed to know how it was possible. His answer: it was possible because of us, because of this, because of the exact mechanism we all carry. But here's what that means. If ordinary compliance enabled the worst atrocities in history, then ordinary refusal can prevent the next ones. The button is always in front of you. The man in the lab coat is always in the room. The only question that has ever mattered, is whether you've decided in advance what you will do. Drop "I know my limits" in the comments if this hit different. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology of authority, how it works and how it gets manufactured in our minds. There's much more to explore. If this video resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't let the algorithm decide what you watch. You know better than that now.